Bonjour everyone! As you've seen, I picked these plums in the garden of the house that my American friends have recently bought. They bought it maybe 6-7 weeks ago, and I decided to go check on their house to see if everything was okay because they haven't been able to come and see the house. And we've had a couple of storms and I just wanted to check if the roof was okay, if the garden was okay. And when I arrived there, we found this plum tree and a couple of branches had broken, so everything was on the ground. So I decided to pick these plums and I'm going to try to make a really nice plum tarte tatin today with these. Next we're going to make the pâte brisée. So you could make a tarte tatin with either a pâte feuilletée, which would be puff pastry, or a pâte brisée, which is more like a short crust pastry, I think would be the equivalent. And since that is less work than a puff pastry, I prefer using that. If you have my cookbook, you've seen that in the cookbook I use store-bought ones. It's just out of convenience to make it as accessible as possible to everybody, but actually making your own pâte brisée is quite easy. We're going to make it ourselves and it's just very simple. It's flour, some butter, we need some salt. And you can also, if you want, add a little bit of sugar to it, which would be logical if you're using it for a sweet pie. And it's also used for savory pies, of course. I'm going to let the cat out because she wants to go outside. Come on. So I use a scale. I'm in Europe. We don't do cups. I do use cups sometimes for recipes that I've been making forever, and I started in cups because I found it somewhere in a book or online. But I use grams. So I'm using this dish that we're going to make it in. So I think I'm going to make a little more pâte brisée. So then we'll do 300 grams of plain flour. Now it depends on what country you're in. This is called farine de blé in French. We have numbers, and that's the same in Italy. They have numbers, and the numbers indicate if it's whole grain or like how processed it is. So the lower the number, in France at least, the more processed, the finer the flour. So the lower the number, the closer it gets to being used for pâtisseries, for example, for baking, because it's a fine flour. The larger the number, the more you get to the whole grain, which I use. I can't show you because I just wrapped it, which I use to make like really dark whole grain breads. So this is a type 55 in France. I think you could just use all-purpose flour. That usually has a very fine structure as well. So 300 grams of that, a little bit of salt, I would say maybe a little under a teaspoon, which that isn't. So there we go again, I'm already messing it up. And I'm just going to mix that up real quickly. And then we're going to add 150 grams of butter that you're going to chop in fine cubes. I'm going to take this out because you will be using your hands to make this, which I love. And this butter is straight out of the fridge. I have not let this sit for very long. I think I took it out maybe 5 minutes ago. I think butter is one of the ingredients that I always have in my kitchen. You know, when people ask what are your staples, I don't know if that's something that you'd be interested in, if I would do a video on the staples in my pantry or what I always have, because I like to cook on the fly. I like to see, you know, what's coming from our garden, or just, you know, sometimes the neighbors bring something, or sometimes you just don't feel like planning your meals. I really don't plan meals that much unless I know we have visitors coming or I'm cooking for guests. So I always have a couple of things that I always have in my pantry and my fridge, so I can always cook something nice even when I feel I don't have time or I didn't plan anything. And butter is definitely one of them. You're just going to mix this up using your hands. You're just going to crush the butter and mix it with the flour and your salt until you get this really crumpy, like sand looking texture. You could technically also do this with your KitchenAid type of appliance, using the what's that called, like the flat hook, but it's just so satisfying to use your hands. Really, it's almost like a meditation, putting your hands in here. See, so this is the texture that you're looking for. It's looks a little bit like sand. You also have a pâte sablée in French, which is called the sandy crust. Doesn't really translate that way. The difference with that is that it has an egg yolk and definitely has sugar in it. Lots of sugar, actually. I find it to be more fragile. It crumbles really easily. So I use that for if I make a pie, like I would put the crust, the pastry in it, bake that first, and then put fruits in there. So for this, we're making pâte brisée. So we're done. This texture is perfect. Now we're going to gradually add water, not too cold, but definitely not warm. And we're going to put this in. It's about 75 millimeters. I'm just going to keep trying to shape this into a ball. So you're going to add as much water as you need for this to stick together. So you'll feel tempted to add more water to it because in the beginning it feels like it's too dry. So just keep kneading it until you get this ball. Don't add too much water because it really doesn't need as much as you feel in the beginning. By the way, everybody's walking in and out of the kitchen today and in the garden. It's still summer holidays here in France, so my boys are still at home. My parents are actually visiting at the moment, and Olav keeps coming in asking if he can start pulling the blower out to blow all the leaves from our gravel terrace. So I think he's going to do that. We're going to hear that in a minute. And yeah, I guess that it's the end of summer. It really definitely feels like that to me. And leaves are starting to fall, also from the lack of rain, but also because it's clearly going to be autumn soon. And I have to be honest, as much as I love summer, I can really look forward to cozy autumn evenings and lighting candles and yeah, baking and cooking more autumny things. I'm looking forward to squash season. Voila. This looks almost good. As soon as it does not stick to the bowl anymore and it doesn't stick to your hands, see, my hands are getting really clean now, then it's done. See, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. I'm going to wrap it in film. Voila, and into the fridge it goes. So this is going to be our mold. And what I like to do is preheat the oven and then put the butter in so it melts, so it'll be easier to grease this. And I like to use a decent amount of butter because one of the things that makes a tarte tatin so good is the butter, isn't it? Now while that melts and the oven is preheating and the dough is resting in the fridge, we're going to prepare the sugar with some spices. So since I said I feel pretty autumny, I am using cinnamon, of course, but also some cardamom that, I don't know if you're watching, Mary, but these are actually still the pods that you gave me. I like it, but not when it's too much. So I think I'm only going to use 2, and I'll just smell and taste the mixture when we're there. So we need to crush these to get the seeds out. There we go. And then you want to crush the seeds as well. That smells so good. Oh, I'm gonna add more. I don't know if my family will like it that much though, so let's not go too crazy. Because it smells a bit like soap, I think. Soapy, gingery, smells very autumny. Now I am going to add, I took this sugar out because I don't think that I have cassonade sugar. Let me check in my pantry. Okay, so how much? Let's say about 3 tablespoons. Right. Then about a tablespoon So my oldest just walked in, as you may have heard, and I said, smell this. And he said it smells like speculoos spices mix. So that's good, but not too much, because then it would be speculoos, which we're not making today. Right, so we're going to grease this, because my biggest fear with tarte tatin is that it won't come out of the mold. Which I will not say has never happened. So that's why I'm greasing this really well. The sugar should also make a caramel when this cooks, so it technically should always come out. Now we're going to cut our plums. So I'm cutting them in halves, removing the pit, and then putting them with this side, like the not the flat side, but the other side, whatever that's called in English. Sometimes I just don't know. Speaking 3 languages every day, I mix everything up. La face bombée, as we say in French. De bolle kant, as we say in Dutch. So this is about 750 grams. And you want to put them in really snug, because they will shrink a little bit. All right, that looks good. And now we're going to add our sugar and spices mix. We're just going to put that all over the fruit. And my plums aren't really ripe enough, to be honest. So I think they need a little more cooking, and they may be a little more sour than I want. So I've added a little more sugar. Oh, it smells so good. So I'm going to have this pre-cook for maybe about 10 minutes because like I said, I feel the plums aren't entirely ripe, so I want them to soften a bit more. So I think I can make myself a coffee now because the bud's still in the fridge. That only takes us 5 to 10 minutes to roll out here so we can put that on top. So yeah, let's just get a coffee and enjoy this beautiful late summer day. Oh, that smells amazing. Voila. And now we want to tuck this in pretty snug because as you see, the plums had already shrunk a bit from the cooking. So I made a little cut in the dough so the steam can come out. I always love to clean the kitchen straight after cooking, so I don't have to do all that when I want to enjoy the thing that I actually cooked. Tell me if you do that too. I know when my family cook, doesn't matter who, whether it's my husband or my boys, one of my boys, the kitchen is a mess when we get to the table. When I cook, the kitchen is almost clean. when we get to actually eating the thing, which is so much more pleasant when you're done eating, I think, to not have to clean the mess in the kitchen. The tricky part, I think, is that it gets broken when you take it out too quickly. So I'm going to leave it to cool for a really long time, and then I'm going to try to flip it and take it out. We may just have to eat this by just cutting pieces and scraping it out one piece at a time. And actually, I don't know if you know that story, but tatin was actually invented by the sisters, Tatin sisters, that was our name, tatin, when they tried to make a recipe that failed. So maybe we are making a new failed tatin version here. That is so good. Hang on, it's moving. I've nearly killed it already, so there's not much that can go wrong now. I think it's safe to say that this is a complete fail. But it's so good. Now, my trick with any tarte tatin is to just, because it gets really messy, you probably can't see it from your perspective, but you just put the fruit back so that it looks nice. I wanted to use my other mold that I have because it's a safer choice. Things come out of that way easier than out of this one, this ceramic one. So that's definitely what I'll do next time. See, you just kind of make it look nice by moving the fruit around a little bit. Just like the sisters Tatin did. And nobody ever knew how failed it was maybe. And they invented this super well-known, now famous dish. And everything that's breaking here, somebody will have to eat this to make it look nice. Did I say in my book, things don't have to look good to taste really good? This is one of those perfect examples. I'm just going to finish it off. Yeah.
Very good.
Looks horrible. Tastes delicious.
It's delicious.